Okay, so the last CPU of this entire session, another Conroe, so it's the E6750 Core 2 Dual CPU. I don't have that many liters of LN2 left, like around 10. I will see if I can get any like top score like wPrime 32, like any of the faster ones. SuperPipe 32M would be relatively easy because it's done on a cascade cooler and I'm on LN2, so I will just quickly cool down to like 120, 130 and try to aim for the max frequency straight away, but it might not be that easy. Minus 83 or 4. I had some serious issues with some socket contact, so it took me a couple of attempts to even get this board posting with this CPU, so I'm not fully sure what's going on. But yeah, so I will see what happens now. Alright, so that's probably the only top score I will be getting with the E6750. Really annoying CPU and hard to control, but at least I got the 32M. This took me like many hours to get even working, and there are some serious issues with the memories and so on. So I'm not fully sure what's going on, so I need to investigate on this CPU later. But yeah, 9 minutes, 29.4 seconds. Previous top was 9 minutes, 35 something seconds. So 6-second improvement there. Of course, there's still a lot of headroom to improve, but just saying, yeah. Oh yeah, record. So that is the Pifast record. Previous one was 18.13. This is 18.11. So it's at 20 milliseconds faster, I think. Yeah. I don't know. Good enough anyways. So at least I got something along with the 32M. I will try wPrime 32. I still have like 3 liters of LN2 left. Yep, and that's the wPrime 32 record, 15.235. Previous top score was 15.25 by Tapaka Sam, posted by Extreme Addict like 3 or 4 years ago. So yeah, very nice result. Error. Too cold. Okay, I think it's time to make like an overall conclusion about the E6750 overclocking and about my entire session overall. Yes, I think that the overclocking part with the E6750 didn't go that well. I first struggled to even post the whole system because I had some weird contact issues at the CPU socket, which I mentioned already at the start of this video, but I think I got them solved for now. And then I was stuck at way too warm temperatures and I just couldn't get the temperatures colder and the CPU and the entire rig stable at levels where they should be. So I'm not like fully sure that what was the real reason behind all of my issues. So there's definitely a lot to improve with this particular CPU model for the next time. And secondly, I really think that the Rampage Extreme is not the best motherboard model for these older like Conroe Dual Cores. The memory controller hub of the motherboard is very flaky with these CPUs at known settings. So I saw that same thing with the E6600. The memories were very unstable at known settings, so at settings where they should be like fully stable, and I had to use like weird high North Bridge voltages at known settings, so it's very weird. And that same thing actually happens with the famous Xeon L3014, which is still the fastest natively single core CPU out there. With that CPU model, it's very hard to get memories stable with good timings at high frequency in dual channel with a high CPU overclock. So this platform is pretty much full of surprises and it's very hard to get the CPU and everything dialed in correctly. And the Rampage Extreme has very weird V-core bug with most of the CPUs, or pretty much with every CPU. So I have seen that bug happen with every Rampage Extreme I have so far. When you set the CPU V-core between 1.8 volts and 1.85 volts. Usually if you set in like 1.81, 1.82, 1.83, the Rampage Extreme will automatically overshoot the V-Core to well beyond 2 volts by itself. And most of the people, like 99% of the users or who ran this motherboard on LN2, will not realize it. That's why I constantly monitor the V-Core voltage myself with a multimeter. So it's very common that if you set like 1.82 volts in the BIOS, you press F10, save and exit, the V-Core overshoots to like 2 volts, like 204 or even 2.1 volts. So this motherboard is very sketchy, and it's not like very like rock solid every time. So in many ways the P5E3 Premium is probably easier motherboard to handle. But yeah, but overall about the entire session I'm very happy. And even with the E6750 I managed to take down 3 of the important top scores out of 6. So I got the top score in SuperPi 32M, Pifast and wPrime 32. So quite good in the end, even though considering all of the trouble I faced with the CPU model. The real like secret when it comes to E6750 overclocking is in the clock skew settings and in the fine-tune settings in the BIOS overall. I found out some good like GDL settings for that CPU model, but the real like key is in the clock skews, and I actually tried to play around with those, but I couldn't dial in the correct setting in that short time period because I was running out of LN2. I was actually close on getting the wPrime 1024M as well, but I ran out of LN2, so I couldn't finish the score, but of course I can get it next time. So when just looking at the SuperPi 32M top score, the score I got was 9 minutes 29.4 seconds at 5046 megahertz. That's a bit over 5 seconds faster than the previous top score made by Tapaka, and he ran the CPU at flat 5 gigahertz. When you look at the third and fourth highest scores in the SuperPi 32M category, which have been like the previous rank 1 scores like long ago, for example the score made by Kintaro was at roughly the same frequency what I ran, but his result was 9 minutes 44.1 seconds. That's like 15 seconds slower than my score. So that kind of proves that my overall like efficiency and performance is actually quite good. Although I actually broke the Windows Server 2003 operating system during the E6750 testing, which I mainly use for SuperPi 1M and 32M. It's much better for those tests than the Windows XP Service Pack 4, which I mainly use for like Pifast and wPrimes. So with the E6750 I had to rely on the Service Pack 4 XP for all of the tests, but it went out alright. So when looking at the fourth highest score, the score is made by IcePower 798, but at 5160 megahertz. So his CPU is running like 110 megahertz higher frequency, but his performance score was only 9 minutes 51.9 seconds. That's 22 seconds slower score than what I got, and at much higher CPU frequency. So that kind of shows that on 775 platform, highest CPU frequency will not guarantee you the best like performance and end result. So there are so many like performance variables on this particular platform that makes this platform very cool and fun to play with. Now when looking at the Pifast results, the score I got was 18.110 seconds, so that was like an improvement of 20 milliseconds over the previous top score, and the CPU frequency was 5135 megahertz. The previous top score was by IcePower at 5160 megahertz, so 25 megahertz higher frequency, and the score was 18.130 seconds, so 20 milliseconds lower than the score that I got. And wPrime 32, I managed to make a new record score in that category, so 15.235 seconds at 5218 megahertz frequency. The previous top score was made by Tabaka, posted by Extreme Addict from Poland, and the previous top score was 15.250 seconds at 5280 megahertz. So 60 megahertz higher core frequency, but I was still slightly faster. But doesn't really matter. These results aren't that good, so there's a lot of headroom to improve, and I will definitely try this CPU again on LN2 next month when I get LN2 once again. But yeah, so even though as the testing with the E6750 didn't go that well, I'm very happy about this last session. This last LN2 session has probably been one of my best LN2 overclocking sessions ever in my life. Probably along with the Z390 Dark launch session like almost 2 years ago. So very happy. I think I got in total like 26 top scores with these older CPUs, and as they are CPU records, they should last for a very long time, if not forever. So with the Core i7 950 I got all of the top scores apart from the highest CPU-Z validation. I didn't really try to get that one, so I'm pretty sure I can get the highest CPU-Z validation if I truly try, if I want to revisit that thing, of course. 950 is one of the most important x58 CPUs that ever existed, and currently when it comes to x58 or LGA 1366 CPUs, I currently own the top scores with the 920. With 930 I have all of the top scores apart from wPrimes, as another user managed to take those scores down, but I have some new CPUs now. So I can try my luck again and see if I have even better chip over here. 950, all of the top scores apart from the CPU-Z validation, as I just said. And with the Golf Town 980X, I have the top score in CPU-Z validation, so roughly 7.2 GHz, and the top score in wPrimes. The top score in Pifast and in SuperPIs are held by AO stepping engineering sample version of the 980X by High Cookie, and many people have said like for a very long time already that those scores are impossible to beat. That could be true, but I think it's still like worth trying. But currently 980X is still very expensive CPU to bin in large quantities, so it's not easy to try to find a very good CPU at the moment. But we will see what happens in the future. And now, like the last x58 CPU model that I really want to try still is the Core i7 Extreme 975. So the highest end version of the Bloomfield CPUs. 975 is the DO stepping version of the core of the Bloomfield Extreme, and 965 is the C1 stepping version of the Bloomfield Extreme. 975 was quite popular in like 2009, and I have been testing them for some time now, and I currently have like one okay 975 at the moment, but I'm pretty sure it's not able to take down the top scores, so I still have to keep looking. It would be cool to get some good scores even with the 965, but it's very hard CPU to bin. If you look at the top scores in wPrimes, those scores or those records are held by some weird DO stepping engineering sample version of the 965, and I cannot find any information about any DO stepping version of 965. So it's very hard to find like a retail C1 965 CPU that could overtake those scores from DO stepping engineering sample versions. But I think anything is possible if you really try. But so I will see if I can find any reasonable 965. And when it comes to 775 CPUs, I have multiple top scores with CPU models that I really like and which I feel are very important, like historical wise. Like when it comes to E8400, I have all of the top scores apart from the highest CPU-Z validation and 1M. Those two really require a P45 motherboard because P45 can reach much higher frontside bus than X48. With E8500 I lost the top score in 32M and Pifast to Tabaka. I think I could retake the 32M, but the Pifast was already so on the edge that I'm quite sure that it will be very hard to try to improve that one. So I will see if I want to revisit that one later. E8600 is very hard CPU to win. I still have the top score in wPrime 32, but currently the target level, like quality wise, when it comes to E8600 is just so high that I really don't know like how good CPU I could find, but I will try to keep looking and I will see if I can find a better E8600. But currently the target level is extremely high. The best CPU which Tabaka found like during this year, I think it could do like 6.7 to 6.8 GHz SuperPi 32M on this particular motherboard over here. So his runs were pretty much just motherboard limited, so he should come over here and try that CPU with this particular motherboard over here. This one can surely run much higher frequencies in those benchmarks than the motherboards he had. When it comes to older 775 CPUs, I have the top scores in with the Q6600. Only in wPrime 32 I lost the top score to Persians, but I think I could try that one again later. E6600 is very important CPU and I now have all of the top scores with that one. I think like if I had to select the most important 775 CPUs, they would be E8400, E8600, Q6600, E6600 and some of the Core 2 Extreme models like QX9650. I have some QX9650s over here as well and I will try that one next time. And now I have some of the more unknown models which I never tried before. I got them for free with some parts recently, like X6800 and Core 2 Extreme QX6700. So I will try those as well later and we will see what happens. But yeah, so let me know what you think. These CPUs were really popular back in the day, like the E6600 and even the E6750. They were really popular back in the day in 2006. I'm not fully sure what's the difference between E6600 and E6750. The funny thing is that the E6750 has a max multiplier of 8, whereas the E6600 has a max multiplier of 9. The E6750 has like higher product number, but it has a lower max multiplier. So I'm not fully sure like which one of the two is a higher option. And I don't really remember what were the original like list prices, like retail prices of these CPU models back in 2006. But these CPUs were really popular back in the day. If you are like if you are like new in the overclocking scene and you don't really know about these old CPU models, just go to the forums that have existed forever. You can find very long threads about like Conroe, overclocking and so on. The only like real difference between that time era and today is the change in the overall like home desktop PC. Back in the day, like between 2006 and 2010, desktop PCs were very common because we didn't have like touch screen mobile devices out yet and the laptops weren't that powerful pretty much. So the main difference kind of is that nowadays the overall like desktop home PC is not so popular how it used to be. So nowadays the desktop home PC segment is only kept alive at the high end. In those work scenarios where performance is very important and there's like a possibility to draw more power and where there's like possibility to produce more heat. So nowadays all of the low-end users that used desktops back in the day in 2006, nowadays they have moved on to like laptops and mobile devices. So the low-end users bought a lot of these CPUs in like pre-built systems back in those days, so they didn't know like what parts they are running and so on. So that's the biggest difference between that time period and today. So if you ask me, the golden era of home desktop PC is between the years of like 2006 all the way until like 2010. After 2010, the desktop market starts to come down, and the mobile and laptop segment goes up. So that's pretty much the history of computers and how computers have developed over the last like 15 or 20 years or so. If you like to see these results with these old and famous CPU models, if you really like to see like record overclocking with some of these older platforms, then please give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And thanks for watching once again, and I will see you on the next one.